welcome to the Inside Wffl podcast. Tonight we're going to be covering all things flag from the last couple of weeks. You may notice that our flag lineup is going to change a little bit for the coming week. So instead of the lovely calming tones of Andy Taylor hosting our podcast, you've got me, Kiwi, leading the charge. And I've got Nick here to join me as always. And a long lost face, shall we say. Arran is back with us to cover flag. Welcome back, Arran.
Thank you very much. I'll try not to send people to sleep with my dulcet tones and my Lancastrian accent.
Glad that have you back on our team. Obviously gives Andy a break. If you still want to hear Andy, though, you can tune into her talking about all things Bucks with Isaac and Stuart over the coming weeks. So you don't have to miss out on your fix there at all. We have I would not say jam-packed schedule tonight because there were some changes, postponements, fixtures that weren't played at the weekend. So we will come on to that. But first of all, I wanted just to really quickly touch on, obviously, the European champs, and mainly to say, for anyone who has not listened yet, we did record a special episode with a couple of GB players last week. Please do go and have a listen. It's not your standard kind of feedback and fixtures and talk about strategy and game. It's a lot more kind of view of behind the scenes and how the tournament played out, I guess, behind the scenes as well as on the field. So please go and take a listen if you haven't already. And with that brings me on to the WSSL, which, Nick, just to be clear, we don't call waffle in public.
Okay, if we're going to be like that now, but okay, let's be surreptitious then. Let's waffle about the WFFL.
And that is exactly why we don't say that.
So we could if we just cut it there and then start again, we've got the recording good. But 50% excitement, I believe.
50%, exactly that.
Yeah.
Yes. So on that note, then let's maybe start with the elephant in the room on the H&C tournament, which unfortunately didn't go ahead as planned at the weekend. Now, I will say that the official terminology, I believe, is that it has been postponed. And I believe that there are some additional weeks capacity left in the schedule to reschedule games. But having been on a team at the receiving end of this 2 seasons in a row now, obviously we had the abandoned fixtures in our own Huskies home tournament last year with the Storm. And then obviously our very first game day this week postponed officially until we hear otherwise. Again, as a result of weather and pitch, and, maybe just to clarify that for everyone as well, it wasn't about the storm or the weather as such. We believe it was about the playability of the pitch because, for whatever reason, this tournament was decided to be played on grass. I'm going to maybe throw it out. I welcome thoughts maybe on, should the season be in the winter? What do we think about a summer season? Blockers? Is there blockers? Are they imaginary blockers? If we want to safeguard the future of women's flag football, is keeping it in a winter season really the best thing? Nick, I'll let you go first because I don't know if you know, but Arran is quite notorious for a bit of a rant. And we won't get a word in after that. So I shall throw this to you first for your comments, and then we'll let Arran have his say on it.
Okay, so for the first time ever in history, somebody went, I'm going to defer to Nick to avoid a rant all my days. Okay, well, I'll get right off the fence straight away. In my personal opinion, what we're doing playing these kind of games and whatnot, I'm sorry, in my personal opinion, and that's just my own view, we're at a fantastic point for our sport, okay? It's a gateway. It's getting publicity. It's getting hype. You've got the Olympics area. There's a lot of attention. Why would we not only forget the weather and everything? Why would we preclude ourselves from being able to make that as accessible as possible to as many women athletes as possible? And when I say that, I mean, why are you running in sync with the rugby league? season? Why are you running in sync with the soccer league season? Why are you running in sync with the hockey league season? At the end of the day, if you were to take away those barriers, could you imagine all the extra athletes that could be accessing our sport, could be part of our game? It's a personal opinion, and I don't know where BAFA falls in this. I don't know. I can imagine Arran's not going to sit in the fence either with this. But if I just lead out with that, we don't even talk about weather and playability of pitches. We just talk about the simple logistics of how you grow a game. The most basic way, in my opinion, to do that is to not directly conflict with other sports that are established and draw the majority of good athletes into them already. Why would you do that? That's like opening a highly priced, overpriced grocery store right next to an Aldi and wondering why nobody's coming through your door. I'm not saying nobody's coming through our door. We've got some great players in the game, fantastic players in the game. But could you imagine all the untapped talent that we don't actually see play because we do conflict with those seasons? That's my view, and that's my starter for 10. Arran, I'll pull the pin out of the grenade, I'll throw it over in your direction. And what would you add to that point, mate?
I think firstly we've got to acknowledge that storms are becoming more and more. So it's not going to change. We've got to accept now that whatever you want to put it down to, most would put it down as climate change, global warming, etc., etc. I'm not getting into that debate. What's clear is there's more storms coming, and I don't think this one will be anywhere near the last. So. For me, the point is, and the question is really, is it now time that we started having this discussion and saying, right, okay, what are the challenges? What are the benefits of moving the season? For me, I think it's a no-brainer. The reason why I think it's a no-brainer, to touch on some of the points that you said, you got potentially a bigger recruitment pool, again, for that point, that you're not clashing with winter sports. And let's be honest, the sports that most people have probably grown up playing, and therefore it's harder to pull them away from it. Well, what if there's an option where we don't need to pull them away from it? So that's there. It's more attractive to play summer, let's be honest. Even the most ardent of players will want or will prefer to play in the summer. There'll be fewer disruptions in terms of storms, weather. Don't get me wrong, we will get the occasional rain, we will get the occasional disruption, but it'll be less than when we're playing in the winter. I also think it opens up more venue opportunities. So again, you're not competing with the likes of soccer, you're not competing with the likes of rugby or hockey to try and get. I mean, hockey's typically played on harder pitches, but sand-based pitches, which we shouldn't be playing on. But ultimately, the 3 and 4G pitches are generally taken up by soccer, let's be honest, because that's the money spinner for venues. But equally, rugby clubs have their own venues. The RFU, I think, is in 365 program or whatever they call it, Rugby 365 program, where they've invested a lot into those rugby pitches. Well, guess what? Let's not be surprised. Rugby takes first. It's top of the priority list when it comes to booking venues. Equally, we're no longer restricted to artificial pitches. We could play on grass now because we're playing in summer. So therefore, the grass and fields are in much better shape. So it increases that pool. And equally, we can venue share with the mixed adult teams as well. So for those that have multiple teams, then actually you can venue share, train, and pool resources that might actually reduce cost. So for me, it's a no-brainer. There are challenges. I'm not gonna beat around that in terms of officials, coaches, players wanting to play in the mixed adult league and in the WFFL. I'm not saying that can't happen. It probably can. For a coach in particular, it's a hell of a commitment, because if you're given 100% as a coach in 2 different teams, it's a big ask. And then there's obviously the contact clash. So I'm not saying it's not without challenge. I'm not saying that it's not being looked into by BAFA. But what we've got to accept here is that we're not league maintenance here. It's sports development. That's what it is. We've always got to keep that in mind. It's sports development, not league administration. So the people who are looking at it, who are the powers that be up in BAFA, whether it's the competition authority or whether it's the national governing body higher up, etc., I think it's about time we started having that discussion.
I think maybe to touch on a couple of other points that you mentioned, Arran, is when you talk about players wanting to play both, right? I think we've seen that happen in contact, right? People play women's contact and they play mixed adult contact. The benefit that we have in flag is game days are once a month, right? For both leagues. So you just don't schedule the tournaments on the same weekend, right? You have them different weekends in the month, and then you've got plenty of time for people to be able to play both. So, it's a hard one. I do think the coaches is a valid point, but a lot of flag teams don't have coaches, right? They're self-coached, whether they're, women's teams or mixed adult teams. A lot of them are self-coached. So, I think
there are, but if we want to develop the sport, I would argue that we probably need more coaches in the game. We need to get away from that player coaching. If we are to, going back to the whole sport development thing, I think if we're going to progress and move the sport on, especially with the legacy of 2028, then I definitely think we should be having better team structures.
So, and I guess I was going to say, Nick, I guess the other point maybe, and this is one that I was going to throw to you, is there's obviously the point about officials, right? I think that's always a big one, right? But realistically, and I know despite your own opinions, most of our fixtures are self-officiated anyway, right? So whether they're self-officiated in the summer or self-officiated in the winter largely doesn't make much difference to when the season falls.
Yeah.
So
for me, there's like an argument and a counter argument, and being really cheesy and Anna, just listening to what you're saying, and Kiwi, and for the listeners here, we're coming at this fresh. The three of us are just having this conversation for the first time, can unpack it as we go. But for me, what I pulled out of your conversation is, this is very cheesy. Okay, this is classic coaching speech. But I've got 5 P's in favour, and I've got 5 C's against. Okay, and if I just summarise what I'm hearing and I agree with, in favour of a potential shift, in favour of BAFA looking at that situation and thinking how that might run. First of all, publicity. Okay. Now, if you've ever run a club, you rely heavily on publicity, local marketing, local media, things like that. They are not going to cover you if there's a football game on, soccer game that weekend, or a rugby game. You're not getting the back page. Simple as that. You're not getting any publicity. You will be picked up by your own group, and that's it. You're not going to make the back page of fantastic broadsheets like the Annandale Observer that everybody obviously is riveted to read every week. So that's one. And another reason for moving it to back that up is players. We said before, getting people into the game. Suddenly you're the top dog. Everyone wants to get involved in your sport, keep fit during the summer. It's great, it's fun. So players, you've got publicity, players, performance. Okay, so performance being, we talk about the weather, we talk about increasing amounts of storms, we talk about that. That also has a detrimental effect on football. We play a game that relies heavily on throwing a ball in the air. Now, if you throw a ball in the air into an 80-mile-an-hour wind, in fact, we played a game that we'll come back to in Inverclyde a couple of years ago where it was in a storm. And one of the players threw a ball and caught his own pass. I mean, literally, the ball just went up, hung in the air, and then came down. Never looks at the ref like, is that legal? Is that you can't do that, it turns out. But there we go. So there's the performance. Pitches, to your point, Arran, you just don't have the accessibility to the best quality pitches. So you end up on a grass field somewhere in the middle of winter. And that's always going to go badly. Okay, as opposed to getting a quality 4G surface that maybe you can negotiate a good deal on because they haven't got much business at that time of year. It works well in the summertime. I know ourselves, we've benefited from free facilities because we play in the summer, which is fantastic. I mean, imagine being able to go on a game day without having to pay for a pitch. I mean, come on, that's great. And then the other one is priority. So you are the big dog. You are the sport that's happening. You're the thing that's going to capture the attention. You're the thing that's going to capture the interest. So for me, those 5 P's, publicity, players, performance, pitches, and priority, are strong factors that say you should really consider possibly changing your game around. The things that go against it. So then you have clashes. We talked about that before. You're going to have contact. You're going to have flag at the same time. That seems to work to a certain degree right now with the NFFL. A lot of those people are playing on a Sunday in the contact game, and they're playing on the Saturday in the flag game. If you're crazy, young and fit, that probably makes sense to you. If you're our age, that probably seems like living hell, but there is that thing about clashes, and then slotting in another thing as well is going to bring my next C, which is calendar. You're going to have NFFL, you're going to have WFFL, you're going to have contact games, you're going to have GB camps, you're going to have all of that stuff going on. It becomes a very clustered program. Not to say that nothing whatsoever happened in August this year, which I can understand with holidays, but there was a 4 or 5 week gap there in the calendar that could have been used for something, rather than it's. But anyway, coaches, that's your other point. You're putting a lot on coaches. You're putting a lot in the existing amount of coaches to cover all of that, especially if they're in a smaller development team. You've got one good coach is going to have to be everywhere. And that's a massive commitment. And if that person's in a relationship, then that's really not going to go well. Sooner or later, that's going to blow up, and then we've got continuity and community. They're the last two. Continuity being in favour because you just do it the way that you've always done it. Just stay with the status quo. People know it's the winter time. You don't have to think too much about that. It's just there for the sake of it. So just go with what you know, sort of thing. And the final one, community. Because WFFL does happen in its own universe, then you can probably have quite a cool community around that and a cool vibe. And we can have podcasts like this where we can really talk about it. It doesn't have to compete for anything else. It gets its focal point. So there are 5 C's for me and 5 P's for me. The P's being pro move. And believe me, I think publicity, players, performance, pitches, and priority, they sink the other ones. It's not even a discussion, in my opinion. It's like comparing a David and Goliath conversation. There's so many reasons, in my own opinion, that you would do it in the summer as opposed to in the winter. You grow the game. You grow the publicity, you grow the base, you grow everything. And that to me is a league or a game that's trying an upward trajectory as opposed to one that's maybe just trying to stay at the level it's at and just flatline, which ultimately is not a good place to be for any sport nowadays, because inevitably if you're not going up or down, you're dying. And that's harsh. That's super duper harsh. But the flatline is not good for a sport that's got a lot of growth right now. Olympics, etc. GB women, fantastic. Euros, go back and check out that podcast. Amazing stuff. All fire to that, man. Get the fuel in it. Let's move this thing, in my opinion. Let's do it in the summer. Sorry,
yeah,
Kiwi. I did think about that a little bit whilst you were talking. I was just like,
that's all right. No, and I was just maybe going to put the final word to say, personally coming from a player who plays in the winter, right? And something maybe, Nick, that you mentioned about performance is it is horrendous playing in the winter when it is freezing cold and you can't feel your hands and it's blowing a gale. And, I get that, even on NFFL, they have rain games and they have all of that, but it's far less,
Yeah.
And there is a reason why the women's contact season was moved to the summer as well. And I guess what we're saying now is that we think that women's flag should have the same parity as all of those other facets of the game, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think we've talked about that enough. We've all put our feelings out there. So we shall leave that out to the powers that be to have that conversation any further. But I'm sure if you ask many women's players, they would probably agree. I'm not saying all, but most, I think.
It'd be interesting to see if people want to comment on that, right, in the thread right now, just because it'd be super cool to hear somebody who has a very strong, compelling argument against what we're saying. And you're not allowed to work for BAFA. You're not allowed to be a referee, okay? but it'd be an interest. I think you've got a good point. Let's see if anyone picks up on that, and we'll come back to the chat. We'll maybe reflect on that the next time we get together, because there might be something we're not seeing here that's, patently obvious to somebody else. Okay.
Yeah, send us a comment on the post. Send us your thoughts and DMs if you want. We're always interested to hear what people think. So, yeah, for sure, let's do that. Right, we are nearly 20 minutes into this podcast and we still haven't talked about any actual football. So on that note, just before we move on to the MSC, I just wanted to mention in terms of the teams playing in the HNC for when we do get to our first tournament at the end of the month, all of the usual suspects are still in the lineup, with the exclusion of Lead Samurai, who are not taking part this season. But we have added the Edinburgh Rogues. So the number of teams in the HNC remains the same. EKP still have their 2 teams, everyone else as per last season. So we look forward to those first rounds of games at the end of the month. We have to wait till then to find out where everybody's sitting. Okay, so on to the MSC, who thankfully did get some games played at the weekend. Although I have seen some videos on Insta, and I think it was a bit breezy. Maybe not as much as it would have been in Scotland, but it did look like it was a little breezy. So on the MSC, just in terms of lineups, we have, one new team, two new teams, actually. We have a London Blaze, who are the second team to the London Flame. We have Panthers Onyx, who are, Coventry Panthers have renamed their existing team to Onyx and brought in a second team called Ice. And Birmingham Lions pulled out of the season this year. So, on that note, Arran, with the graphics, this is your cue.
So
these are the fixtures that did take place at the weekend. Some interesting things that happened. I know we don't like to referring teams as first and second teams, but for anyone who's curious, Arran, I believe that Panthers Onyx are the kind of existing team, and Ice are
the national champions.
The national champions, yes.
Definitely existing. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right.
So
Okay.
Onyx is the defending champions, shall we say, Ice being their new team. And obviously we have the same situation in London, as I mentioned. So looking at these fixtures then, let me come to Arran first this time. What stands out to you in these fixtures? Who do you think had a good day? Maybe who had not a quite so good day? Maybe who didn't perform how we would have expected if I'd asked you this question last week?
Okay, so I think first things first, it would be a good idea to mention that we don't know. We believe that a lot of the GB players were taking a week off, which is understandable given that they had played in China and then played in Paris, and then obviously the kickoff of this league the week after. So I believe
to caveat that, I thought that, but going by Instagram, I've seen that our starting quarterback played for Coventry Panthers. Jock, who we spoke to on the podcast, definitely played for London at the weekend. So maybe not as many as we thought taking a week off. Maybe honestly a well-deserved, but I don't have the numbers. I only go with who posted.
I don't think Jock even takes a minute off. Like we talked to her last week. Man, that is energy upon energy upon energy. So yeah, I would be shocked if she didn't play for at least 3 teams and score a million touchdowns.
So yeah, a mixed bag. Some of the key players I think did play, maybe not all of them, because as you rightly said, had earned a week off if they wanted it. On that note, back to you, Arran. Apologies for the interruption.
So I think obviously the first game back was Coventry Bowl, Coventry Cougars versus Panthers Onyx. I mean, what a game to start the league back off with. Don't go off Tonify. Tonify score is wrong. Somebody inputted the wrong score. So we've got the right score on the screen there, which was 24-12 to the Cougars. So I think in terms of standouts for me, I think Flame had a great weekend. Again, don't go off Tonify. That states they're 4-0 because they entered a score in next round as well as this round, so it shows them as 4-0 rather than 3-0. But they are 3-0. I'd argue that they had a good mix of established team, new team, and a team that struggled last year. So I'm not entirely sure it's a true position as to where they're at, but ultimately we can only take it, on face value for what we've seen, and ultimately they're 3-0. So that was a great start for them. Panthers Onyx, I think they had a good day. The only blot on their paper was obviously the Cougars lost. Cougars obviously had a great day. Interesting to see that both new teams in week 1 already have their first wins under their belt. So that's good to see. And then poor Nottingham Gold. They had a relatively close affair with the Amazons. And then 2 tough games against Coventry and against Onyx. 144 points conceded, which is on average 20 touchdowns, and only 6 points scored. So, with a net point per game, net points of 138, it's a tough one for them. Hopefully they'll turn it around when they have a bit of a, not easier, I don't think there's such thing as an easier week, but some teams where they actually might be able to compete against rather than the the top two ultimately.
Yeah, interesting one there. I think we saw University of Nottingham, both teams last year. Maybe I forgot to mention also at the top of the bill that Nottingham had gold and green last year. They just have gold this year, just the one team. But both of those teams did struggle last year, and I think only come away with their first wins of the season in the last tournament, which arguably was also a very storm-affected tournament out, and I actually went to watch that one. It was horrendous. I was crippled from tearing my calf muscle at the H&C tournament the weekend before and spent it shivering in a chair on the sideline for the day. But Nick, over to you. Maybe I think. Do you think that maybe GP fatigue played a part in that Coventry Cougars, Coventry Panthers, Onyx game? Because clearly a lot of players, if they did play, represent those two teams, and that maybe isn't in a close of a affair as we would have maybe thought heading in. Be interested to know your thoughts on that one.
Well, there's definitely a factor there, and I think it's right to touch on it. If you've just come back from playing at the highest level you can in Europe, coming away with the gold, absolutely skied, and then suddenly you find yourself on a windy winter's day. We'll call it autumn for the sake of it. It's going to be, it's a different world, and your head's not the same as it is in France. You're not going into that with the same adrenaline pumping, with the same. You're almost coming into just a tad relaxed, maybe just a tad, I don't know, distracted by what's happened in your life before that. There's going to be a whole bunch of factors that are going to start a player slow. You'll see a great player coming off a great game and then going into a game that's, let's just say, a slightly easier standard. And it's almost like the game drops right down to that standard because they just they've switched off to a degree. And I'm not suggesting that. I don't know the game. I didn't watch the game. But I think I have seen enough good players in time to see that they can be sky high one week and then you suddenly drop it down and they drop to that level. And it's almost like I'm just going to sit in the back seat a little bit here. I'm exhausted. I've just done a whole bunch of work. I've just been on cloud nine. I've been running on adrenaline for 14 days. And now I find myself back home in the domestic fixture. And it can sometimes have an effect. I've seen that with players. I mean, we've all seen really top quality teams in any sport. They'll do fantastically one week and then the next week they'll play against, and we can use the NFL as examples all over the place. We've just watched the Jacksonville Jaguars turn over the Chiefs in the last 24 hours. You can be in a situation where the game itself trips you up, and that's not a link to Trevor Lawrence or anything by any means. I just mean it's very hard to drop down a gear and to find that same enthusiasm level. It just is. Okay. So I think maybe that was a factor. Team that I'm looking at here when I was going through these, and I don't know the game as well as you at all, Kiwi. I mean, you're an expert in this area. But the team that I found intriguing in terms of how the results went were the Leicester Huntsmen, who I have a personal affinity towards at this moment in time. And just trying to figure out where their game was at, because they came off a tough game against the Panthers. But they seem to have dug themselves back in. And when I see London Blaze, excuse me for thinking about London Blaze in the context of NFFL, but I look at London Blaze and I almost drop my pen with fear. So I'm like, no, who's playing London Blaze? But then you go, all right, okay, breathe. Those Leicester Huntsmen's games are real interesting because then they come up against a team later on that I think that the way the fixtures different teams have beaten different teams in this. And you kind of have one of those mad mathematical situations, like everyone's kind of in that mid-table to lower table bracket seems to have beaten each other in some way or another. You're trying to figure out who's hot and who's not. But I think on the basis of what I see in the spread, an interesting one to follow for me this year is going to be Leicester Huntsmen. I'm interested in how their season unfolds, particularly having seen their Premier and NFL team, and they're an excellent setup. But other than that, man, I'm a rookie at this game. So I'm just looking at you, Kiwi, to guide me through these fixtures because I could just chew on forever and give you no value whatsoever other than, good players when you bring them into a different setting. One of two things happen. Either they blow up and show off, or they switch off and they become backseat. It's hard to imagine that, Arran. You coach. Imagine if you'd taken the same team from a European Championship to a normal game day. I mean, your whole pump-up speech beforehand is going to change, isn't it? I mean, you're not going to get the same adrenaline rushes. You're not going to get... How do you sell that,
Yeah, it's difficult. The only way you can do it is just reaffirm your culture, what you're setting out, your goals, your objectives for the season. and reminded them of that. But you're right. I mean, it's a, those that have come away with that gold medal will be flying high at the minute. And, you can take it two ways. You can remind them of the goals and utilize that high that they're on and say, right, let's take it now into the domestic league, flag never stops, etc. Let's show them why you're European champions, etc., etc. Or you can just ultimately hope that they give them a break, give them a rest, give them a pass for whatever they want, limit the reps, or if they want more reps, which most competitors will do, give them reps and just be at peace with that. It might not be as productive because they have had a busy few months, on travel, on let's be honest, very tough competitive competitions.
Yeah, I think maybe to circle back to kind of the fixtures that we talked about, I think a few things to remember is that obviously Coventry Cougars and Coventry Panthers, now called Onyx team from last year, I believe that of these fixtures, we had one go one way and one go the other over the course of the season. We also obviously saw how close that final was at the end. And again, a lot of these players are experienced, GB caliber, past or present. And I think you can't, obviously it's the first game of the season. I think a lot of these players know when to peak going into the end of the season. And we saw that with the Panthers last year. Obviously they lost one, they won one against the Cougars, but ultimately they came back and fought. And anyone who hasn't watched the WFFL final from last year, it is an amazing display of flag football. It went into extra time. It was nail biting. It had everything. So do go back and watch it if you want to know what we're talking about when we mention these teams. But I think, yes, it's a result. Maybe for me, it was a slightly bigger score in the Cougars' favour than I would have thought. But again, it's literally first game of the season. We know that these players and teams know when to peak through the season. So I wouldn't expect that to be any different come the back end of the season. On the Leicester Huntsmen, obviously they did make finals last year, but maybe to your point, Nick, in both the HNC and arguably even more so in the MSC last year, apart from the top two places being the Cougars and the Panthers having locked up spots going into the final game day last year, that mid-table pack of teams that we had, none of those places were locked up going into the final game day. So we do see in the north, you arguably have EKP Black on top, and then a middle tier of teams, most of whom chasing for those final spots in the north. And then again in the south, you have the two kind of teams on top, and then a group of about 4 teams, I would argue, probably fighting for those remaining 2 spots for Ravenscraig. So it does make for an interesting course of the season when you think about it like that. Maybe not far apart from what you see in the NFFL, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm looking forward to 24th October. I want to see how the HNC teams look, how that goes. I'm really excited about that. Actually, me and Thea are going to come up that weekend. We're going to be rooting for you. But also, I really get a chance to see this. It's been a long time since I've had a really good look at the flag game within the WFFL. Way back in the Manchester Titans days, pre-COVID, as if that was the beginning of time or whatever. But but I do remember then one thing that stays true now, and that is Coventry's a place where they play a lot of good football. Whether that's flag, whether that's contact, that part of the world is the football heartland, if you will, the Midlands. So I'm not surprised when I look at anything to see Coventry teams dominating. That score against the University of Nottingham Gold, wow, that was a real stinger, 66-zip. And then they took it as well from the other guys. The Panthers hit them after that with a 60-0 as well. That is tough. So those are clearly the established teams right now. They're the teams who are out of the gate, and you'd love to see a showdown between them later in the season that maybe goes the other way, so we get some salt mixed into it. That's certainly the one to be watching. Yeah, it looks like an exciting year ahead. Hard to know what to gauge against until you see the HNC, until you start to see how things go there. EKP will obviously be an excellent team up there. As as there are many good teams that play in the North, but just knowing them from personal experience, that's going to be a really good bellwether to compare against this. And then maybe once we've had a chance to look at 2 game days together, we can start to get a bit more of a pattern as to who looks like they're really going to be top dogs this year. But at face value, Coventry are scary good. Scary good.
Yeah. And I think it'll be interesting over the course of the season to maybe have a look at those North teams and South teams. I think, Aaron, I'm sure you agree that arguably we had this kind of division between the North and the South, a lot like we talk about in Contact as well at the moment, where some of the, generally the South teams seem to be playing at a higher level than the North teams. And we assume that dominance to continue.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, I think it'd definitely be interesting. For me, what would be interesting, if you take Coventry Cougars out, Coventry Panthers, Onyx, and EKP Black, if you take them out of the equation, and maybe some of the new teams as well, being honest, Cheshire Huskies, I'll put them there. If you took them out of the equation, you've got a massive core of teams that are all competitive, and that could go any way. That could go either way. So I think in terms of the North-South divide, I don't think it's as big in flag as it is in Contact. We keep referring to Contact, shouldn't do. But ultimately, I don't think it is as big. I just think I do think the EKP Black may sometimes suffer as a result of not having those challenging games against, whereas the 2 Coventry teams that's a challenge for both teams. It's not an easy ride for either of them. Whereas I think last season we saw EKP Black pretty much guaranteed to romp every single game in the HNC. And it doesn't do them any favours when they do come up against a challenging team such as Coventry, Cougars or Panthers in the finals.
Yeah, and maybe just to build on that for anyone who isn't aware, and I was just trying to have a quick scroll, but I couldn't find the answer. For reference, EKB Black actually lost in the first game that they played at finals at Ravenscraig this year and got locked out relatively early, despite having an 8-0 season in the North, which is further maybe highlighting that difference in quality of teams. As Aaron said, they having been on the receiving end of 2 EKB Black romps last season, where just scoring a touchdown was a celebration, even though we were still losing by 30 points. But again, and I can't remember who they lost to in the first round. It seems like a lifetime ago, but they did ultimately lose in that first round and ended up in the plate where many thought they should have probably progressed. We thought we were going to see some kind of Coventry EKP final, which was what everyone was saying at the start of the day. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out this season.
And that can happen though. That you see that in sport all the time. If you go on an undefeated season at a lot of sports, or if you're up there and you're established, the first time you get into a real fist fight, suddenly you're like, whoa, wait a second. I don't know how to come from behind. I don't know how to deal with somebody who's just going to keep coming at me. And it almost spoils you a little bit if you have a really clean season, because you haven't really had that moment where you've had to inhale, dig deeper and find a new gear, because you've just been used to getting your way, just been used to having your own way. And that happens to teams, that happens to us as well. That happens to a whole lot of teams. So I think there's a valid point in there. It's good to be bloodied, when you're going into a situation. It really is, because I think it was Van Gogh that said success is often just a string of failures. See what I mean? Success is often found after a string of failures, which suggests that in order to be able to achieve things, you need to know what it feels like to lose things, what it feels like to find a tough day. I think there's something there. I think there's something there to maybe look in at and analyse once the teams get out of the gate and we get a chance to see how they're getting on, but then take it to Ravenscraig, and maybe we might get another surprising upset at the start of the day there this year round 2 if you find a team that's just had it too easy,
And I think maybe...
Or not too easy, too good. That's unfair. You know what I mean? Yeah.
For anyone who is joining us from NFFL and doesn't know WFFL so much, the last couple of years, they have clean split the league into a North and a South, and there hasn't been any cross-conference games, as you would see in the NFFL. So I think maybe, again, if we see a similar play out this year, I think it does open up that conversation again of whether, for the quality of the sport and the quality of games, we should maybe be looking at those cross-conference games making some kind of comeback, just to offer the diversity of opponent as well, right? But we shall not open that can of worms today, Arran, unless you had a comment that you wanted
I was
to
just
make.
about to open up a whole nother can of worms. I was going to say,
you can, a little one.
Maybe, okay, or maybe 2 tiers.
Yeah, maybe.
Ooh.
Logistics,
do we have enough
travel,
teams?
Costs, etc. I think we do have enough teams. I think the travel would be horrific, if I'm honest. So I can understand why we wouldn't go down that route. But I would say there's an argument for it, definitely.
Maybe we'll see. Sorry, Nick, to cut you off.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Maybe we should see how they manage to handle this for the new upcoming division of NFFL in this National League, right? And see how that plays out. And then maybe we can replicate it in the WFFL. Nick, I'm not sure if I've stolen the words out of your mouth.
I think that's a better point than the one I had to make. There is, because I think the National League is going to teach us a lot about the capacity that exists within the game as we know it today. That could go one or two ways. I mean, let's not. I mean, it's fantastic looking at all the positives, but they're also what happens when a team starts to drop out because it just can't make that travel commitment. What happens when things start to get messed up because suddenly the enthusiasm of one particular generation of players isn't transferred into players coming through. Lots of different things can take the legs off those when there's no money in the game and it's all being self-funded, and that's. Yeah. Let's just put a pin in that. I really want it to work out, obviously. But let's just put a pin in that until we've seen it last more than a season, more than a team, more than a generation.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Right. To keep us on track, Arran, let's quickly have a quick look at where this leaves us on the table.
That's me, isn't it? That's me with the graphic.
There you go. Arguably, the H&C, that no movement. Cheshire Huskies sitting in second place.
Fantastic. We should end the season now, and I think the final seedings are out. It's official. Aberdeen, congratulations. Cheshire, you're there. You've gone Ravenscraig. Well done.
Yeah, great. If only. Maybe just to touch on then, by way of the fixtures and the games, you've got Coventry Cougars on top, London Flame in second, Coventry Panthers Onyx, and then London Amazons rounding out the top four in the south. I don't think we need to discuss that anymore. We do still have. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I do think it's worth mentioning that obviously this is different to what you will see in Torify because of what I mentioned earlier about Flame looking as 4-0. But I think it's worth mentioning. This is unofficial, based on last year's tiebreakers. So on the assumption that those tiebreakers are the same. I think we're right, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out just in case anybody thinks that actually it's wrong.
Everyone was going to take it as gospel. You're the first person to say it. So, like, even Baffer will be like that. That's how we're doing it this year. It's been said. It's done. I've got the shout on this one.
Maybe the lesson of this is hashtag get Tornify right. Maybe we all need to make an effort to get Tornify correct.
I'm nailing my colours to the cross for this year. I am supporting the Leicester Huntsmen throughout the duration of this WFFL season in the South. And I'm going to wax lyrical about them throughout the season. That's my team, and ain't nothing going to change that. Okay.
So this is like Vic with the honey badgers, basically. Yep.
That's it.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's it. I think because I wouldn't dare pick anyone in the north because I've got too many friends in those different teams, and I'd probably get a death threat.
Also, it's not you. I was going to say making up for past sins, but maybe that's not the correct.
No, it's me. Yeah, absolutely. It's me. but go Leicester Huntsman or Huntsman.
For anyone who doesn't, if anyone doesn't know why we say that or what we're talking about, go back and listen to our podcasts on the NFFL finals, and you will hear maybe a bit of background on that one. I shall not spoil it anymore.
Part 2.
Yeah,
part 2. Yes,
just a bit of vinegar on the chips. That's all. Everyone likes a bit of vinegar on the chips. Anyway, let's move on from that.
Okay, right. We have a handful of minutes left, gents, before we are out of time. So maybe I think we could just do a very brief touch on the upcoming Winter League in the north.
Salty.
Arran, I believe you've got a graphic. Here's one you said earlier.
Which one do you want? Do you want the teams, Nick? Because I'm going to be honest, we're relying on you on this one. This is all new to me, the Winter League.
Let's get the teams on.
Lots of teams.
Ravenscraig Saturday, absolute bedlam. It kicks off. Fantastic event, the Winter League. If we focus in on the adult teams, just without neglecting the under 17s, 14s, 11s, the brilliant football there, by the way, and that adds a whole new level to things indoors. But if we focus in on the adult teams, we've got 33 games in total this Saturday in Ravenscraig on 3 pitches. The first game kicks off at 1:20, the last one at 6:20. There's 12 teams involved in those 33 games. Of the slate you see in front of you, towards the bottom end of it, you're going to see a couple of things. Top Gun and TS17, you're going to think, who are they? Top Gun are a mercenary team. They're made up of vagabonds, very good vagabonds, international quality vagabonds. And TS16 are the Scottish under-17 team who play in that bracket. Because it gives them an opportunity to play up and get some good football and things like that going on. Now, there's a lot of things that happen around Winter League that are super exciting. And I've had some brief chats this afternoon with some of the key teams who are going to be involved. So Top Gun this afternoon, I was speaking to Cass. Anyone who knows Cass Shadow, I know what a great player he is. Moved over at Grangemouth, used to be with Glasgow. He says, we're coming back again to hold on to the title and make teams work hard to get a W against us. See y'all on the field. So he's feeling rather upbeat. Things to tell you about Top Gun. It's a mixed squad. So it's a squad where they bring in different players, guest players each year. You have some really good players like Nicky from Glasgow's in there, Julian's in there normally. This year there's a few other faces in it, but it's usually an exceptional team of players. They tend to go with a very small squad. So the idea is everyone plays a bit of everything, but they bring a real quality to the game. Like they bring European world standard quality into the tournament. So beating Top Gun is the aspiration of every team that goes there. However, this year they admit themselves the competition's getting tougher and tougher, and they're expecting to really be pushed this year by some of the teams that are playing in there. And there are some great teams in there. We can see obviously Renfrewshire's in there, they're a great team. West Lothian, brilliant team. One of the teams I was actually talking to as well today, Noel from West Lothian, says he's looking forward to using the Winter League to develop players and take the next step overall. So he's trying to play it down a little bit, but I know that they're out there to get some wins too, despite what he says. It is interesting, they're going to roll out a second team for the first time in their history. So the Chargers, if you know them, have the Lightning logo. It's very Flash Gordon. He said he's not going to give me too much details, but it's going to be astronomical. I think that's a pun in there somewhere, so be prepared. But the club's looking forward to the upcoming challenges. They've got some really good games going on, nose buzzing going into it. Newcastle's got 2 teams in there now. They've got the Blackhawks and the Silverhawks. The Silverhawks are going in. Is it Silver or Shadow?
Shadow.
I always think Silverhawks. I think, why didn't you call them Silverhawks when you called the Blackhawks? Anyway, Shadowhawks, right? They're going to be treating us very differently. So I'm just saying this as a shout out to the other teams they're going up against. 2 of the game days are going to be very development focused. Out of the 4 game days, 2 of them are going to be very competitive. So please don't think that if you beat the Shadowhawks on one day, you're going to see the next team, the same team that the next day you possibly aren't going to. And certainly the Blackhawks are going there super competitive. They're taking in their rookie QB from the NFFL this year. They're going to try and bloody that player a bit more to get them ready for the Prem next year. They're looking to build chemistry within their team, according to Phil, and they're looking to develop the defensive game. So they've got big ambitions, I think. I think the Blackhawks will be pushing for it. Top Gun clearly will be pushing for it. So they're teams to watch when we start to see the results coming in. Teams that are breaking through, Lancashire Bombers, TS17. We'll just go quickly, Lancashire Bombers. That is effectively the under-17 team that won the national title, who have now aged out. So they're all like pimples are broken out, and they're no longer like lovely, fantastic, amazing young youth players. They're now just like crazy young men, adolescents, mixed in with this bag of psychopaths who are the rest of the Lancashire Bombers, who we love very much, Russ. But they're now coming in. 7 of them are going to go up there, all aged between 16 and 19. So they're going up there to step up and play some of the best teams, and they will be playing some of the great teams who are playing Top Gun and all those teams. So absolutely rooting for those guys because it's a big step up. 7 going, there'll be 9 at the next game day. And the final team that I want to shout out from my stack in here is going to be Grangemouth. I think Grangemouth Colts. we've seen Grangemouth do extremely well this year, in my opinion, in the NFFL. They've done well to get those 3 teams going. Now it's time for the Colts. This is now time for the Colts to start to show that they can go toe-to-toe with these teams. They're going to put up some tough games on Saturday. I think they've got Renfrewshire early on. I think they've got a Newcastle Blackhawks game in there. So there's going to be some super competitive games. The Winter League is going to be great. If you're in Ravenscraig at the weekend or anywhere around the Glasgow area and you've got nothing better to do, between 1:20 and 6:20, you can see 33 games of flag football, which is just nuts. Arran, I don't know if you know much about the format of these kind of Winter League games, but it's like a super short game clock, rolling the whole time. It's like, it's hell for leather. You get 20 seconds, I think, between plays. Every penalty is a loss of down. So you do a false start, loss of down, get over it. Do you know what I mean? It's boom, 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 boom. So the game moves super quick. If you're not quick out of that, the blocks at the start of these games, you get buried behind other teams so quickly in points, and then it's over. I'd like to give an individual shout if I can. We're putting out the Legion, which is our new second team, effectively. So we have obviously the Centurions, now the Legion. The Legion will be led by our 16-year-old quarterback, Tom. So Tom makes his debut in adult football properly this weekend, 16 years old. So excited for this kid. I'm not suggesting right now that, he should be into the deep end or anything, but we've got a real talent here. This kid's really great. He's come through our youth policy, and I really believe in that this kid's got GB all over him. But I think this will be an early test for him into the deep end. And with our first game being against, I believe, the Aberdeen, who we had a bit of salt with last year, Tom's going to find himself in the deep end of the swimming pool real quick. There you go. That was the Winter League in 5 minutes. If you're still awake, feel free to go back, slow it down by 50%, and you might understand something I said.
Can I give you my team that I'm rooting for? So I'll give you one for this. I won't commit myself to the WFFL because I'll either annoy the Huskies or I will. People will say I'm a holder if I pick the Huskies. So I'm going to avoid my team for the WFL. Vic, which team do you think I'll be rooting for on them teams that are participating in the Winter League?
Bradley.
Yeah, absolutely. Hometown. So Burnley. It still annoys me that they don't have an adult team, but
great team, though. Yeah, great team.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've stayed true to the colours, literally, by having claret and blue kit. So
I refed them twice this year. That youth team, I refed them twice this year, and there's some fantastic talent in that team. It's a really great team. Those guys in Lancashire Bombers are a little bit. There's a lot of links there because I recognise faces in the coaching that play for the other team, etc., and it all mixed together. Again, we spoke about Coventry in the first part of this podcast when we talked about the WFFL and that. There's something going on in Lancashire. There is something going on in there, especially around that area. There's a whole bunch of really young, really talented GB players breaking through. There's even kids like Bobby down in the NFL Academy and things. I mean, that's an area on the map to really watch over the next 10 years because we could be looking at the real future of the game, the flag game coming through Lancashire. The future of flag football runs on the M6 through Lancashire. There we go. That's what I was trying to say.
There we go. Okay, amazing. Thanks for that, Nick. And we shall wait to see how that plays out. And I'm sure we will touch on Winter League again when we are back. Do we have anything else? Oh, the other thing I was just going to mention, lovely for anyone who didn't see it, but an amazing celebration of our GB women's flag champions at the NFL game at the weekend. I saw lots of cuts to them sitting in the stand with the NFL League commissioner, and they obviously got a shout out and a celebration on the field. So that was amazing to see, and really cool for those players as well to have that recognition on a somewhat global stage. So super cool to see. I think that's it. Have we covered everything? Did I miss anything?
Nope. Don't think so.
I don't think we got Aaron's opinion on whether or not teams should play in the winter. Yeah. Well, maybe we did. Yeah.
No. I think
I'm just trying to poke. Yeah. He did not bite. He's just sewed in bite there. So I'm going, okay, fine. I'm not nothing with that. I can't wind up Aaron on this or whenever.
Wind me up anytime. It's very easily done.
Amazing. Well, I think that's it. We shall be back after the next game day, which is the 24th or 25th, whatever that is. 25th, Saturday the 25th, both HNC and MSC in action. So you can expect to hear us again after that tournament, when hopefully we'll have 2 lots of fixtures to review. Thank you so much for listening, watching, tuning in. Please like, follow, share. If you've got comments, if you want to send us feedback, we welcome that. We're also very interested to hear any behind the scenes information on teams or fixtures or players. If you've got anything you want to share with us, please send us a DM, Instagram, Facebook, all of the usual suspects. Thanks again, Arran and Nick, for joining me tonight, and we shall be here again soon.